We got several different stories to cover from a couple of different media outlets. It is time for another premiere video of the world's Newsround. Let's go, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another premiere video of the world's Newsround, where I cover various different stories from several different media outlets outside the UK. We got 6 different stories to cover here. The first story that we'll be covering will be from Al Jazeera with the headline that Ukraine, then the US are to hold talks on the Russia-Ukraine war in Saudi Arabia next week. The next piece we'll be looking at is Albania shuts down TikTok for a year amid concerns over violence among children. We're also looking at a piece from Africa News on Ebola cases in Uganda have risen to 14 as a new cluster emerges. Very concerning there indeed. We will then look at a piece from the Association Press with the headline that South Korea has stopped some of its military drills after an accidental bombing and a possible setback to US exercises. Another very concerning indeed. Then we'll be looking at a piece from Middle East and Eye with the headline that that Sudan launches a case against the United Arab Emirates, that's the UAE, at the International Criminal Justice, the ICJ, over complicity in genocide there. And then finally, we will look at a piece from the New York Times with the headline that at least 70 people have been killed as Syrian security forces clash with Assad Loyalists there. So, for a long time, I've always thought that since Assad's been from that, there's been calm, but it looks like there are those who are still a small amount of people within the country that still remain loyal to the Assad regime, but we'll come to that a bit later on, guys. The date and time of this recording for reference is the Friday the 7th of March 2025, just for reference, and just at the 10:58 a.m. UK time, just for reference for those who want to know as well. And a reminder just to hit that like button, share across social media. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing to support the channel. Let's get going, you guys. So the Ukraine and US are to hold talks on Russia-Ukraine war in Saudi Arabia next week. US President Donald Trump says Kiev and Moscow have no choice but to secure a peace deal to end the war. Now, obviously, this is something that can change at a whim, a very short notice, because Donald Trump is like a ticking time bomb. He's animated. He can change his minds for anything. So anything that regarding this stuff, yeah, I would just say take a pinch of salt, because even though I'm recording this on a Friday, things could literally change by Sunday. Like, that's how crazy these things are when it comes to stories like this. Now, I'm generally curious, as I'm glad that the US are holding talks with Ukraine. I'm not happy that Ukraine have been kept out of the dark. I don't know what the US is going to offer. I like the fact that this has been done in Saudi Arabia and not in Washington as well. This is away from Donald Trump, so there'll be much more cooler heads with these talks. That is for sure as well. Now, getting Ukraine in the room with Russia is very, very difficult, and I don't blame Ukraine for not wanting to get into a room with them. But at the same time, I also understand the needs for securing a peace deal. I understand why we have it. We need to have it, but obviously we need guarantees of some sorts to ensure that Russia won't attack again. And that's the key thing here to ending this conflict, is that if we can get some kind of guarantee, that it would be great. The problem is that Donald Trump is completely and totally unreliable and changes his mind at the whim of a hat. So anything that he says, he just cannot take seriously unless they actually sign a guarantor of some sorts. Then things will be different. But I don't think that Trump wants to sign that guarantor. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want to drag the US into a war with Russia. And the thing is, because Donald Trump is unreliable, could you imagine just for a moment that if the US signs a guarantor and that Russia attacks, and then America refuses to go to war with Russia because it's Donald Trump? Could you imagine that scenario? Yeah, I could actually imagine that scenario, because that's how insane Donald Trump is. Like, I can actually see that happening. But as for these talks, because it's in Saudi Arabia, I really do hope there is some constructive dialogue that is made out of this. Without the insane orange man there, without JD Vance, the vice president, who doesn't have a clue about any of this stuff whatsoever, who's just looking to try to talk tough and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it's going to be very interesting to say the least, guys. So the United States and Ukrainian officials have indicated that they will meet in Saudi Arabia next week to discuss a peace framework effort ending the Russia-Ukraine war. This follows Washington's suspended military aid and intelligence sharing with Kiev this week, days after US President Donald Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky clashed at the White House. Trump's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff confirmed that he will meet Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia next week to carve out a framework for a peace agreement. So, quote, "We are now in discussions in coordinating a meeting with Ukrainians in Radua or even potentially Jabba, so that the city is moving around a little bit. We will be Saudi Arabia," Witkoff told reporters outside the White House on Thursday. So the location hasn't been disclosed just particularly yet, but it is going to be Saudi Arabia. I think the idea of getting down a framework for a peace agreement and an initial ceasefire as well. Zelensky has also said he will travel to Saudi Arabia on Monday with a parade of officials and plans to hold talks with US officials. "I am scheduled to visit Saudi Arabia to meet with the Crown Prince. After that, my team will stay in Saudi Arabia to work with American partners," Zelensky said in an evening address on Thursday. Ukraine is most interested in peace. So Zelensky is going to be meeting Saudi Arabia, and then he's going to leave officials there to see what they can hash out a deal with the US there. Very interesting indeed. This will be the first high-level meeting of US and Ukrainian officials since February 28 meeting between Zelensky and Trump, devolved into a shouting match and ended with the Ukrainian leader being asked to leave the White House. Following the public spat, Trump's several intelligence sharing and severed intelligence sharing aid to Ukraine, which is absolutely bloody stupid. However, on Tuesday, he said he had received a letter from Zelensky in which the Ukrainian leader said he was ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible. Trump, in exchange with reporters on Thursday, said he believes his administration has made a lot of progress in recent days in both Ukraine and Russia, but did not specify how, because he just says it. "I think what's going to happen is Ukraine want to make a deal because I don't think they have a choice," Trump says. Ukraine always have a choice. To say that they don't have a choice is folly. They always have a choice. Let's be very clear about that. They've always had that choice. "I also think Russia wants to make a deal because in a certain different way, the way that only I know, they have no choice either." We know why Russia wants to make a deal, and the main reason why, Russia wants to make a deal is because their economy is shit right now. It's really, really bad. It's really, really bad. It's not doing well. Russian people are really, really poor right now. They're much worse off. They are struggling to get by. Their military has been hampered. They are really very weak. Russia are very, very weak. Let's be very clear about this. But any indication that you've had this premise that Russia are really doing well? People inside Russia, people outside Russia, the majority, Russia are not doing well at all. They really, really are not. Trump's envoy Witkoff on Thursday noted that Zelensky had been apologetic in recent days about the White House blow-up and expressed gratitude. He is worried about whether the much-touted minerals deal by Washington would be signed during the meeting in Saudi Arabia. "We'll see if it follows through," Witkoff has added. Yeah, I think I hope that EU nations have been pressuring Zelensky not to sign that minerals deal as well. The proposed deal is seen by many analysts as an attempt by Kiev to win support of the new US administration amid tensions over Washington's outreach to Moscow to end the Ukraine war. Trump's administration officials have said the economic pact would bind the US and Ukraine closer together and would give Russian President Vladimir Putin pause before considering malign actions against Ukraine in the future. The agreement would give the US access to Ukraine's rare earth deposits and could be value of US aerospace, electric vehicles, and medical manufacturing. Like, they do have valuable resources, Ukraine, but yeah, it's also like the hope is that it would bind things, but you just can't trust Donald Trump. I just can't trust him. You can't trust his administration. You really, really cannot right now. And in all of this, they just cannot be trusted in any of this. I really don't want them to sign it, but I also understand why they want to sign it as well, because they want that security. They want that guarantee from America to be there for them. They really want that, and I just don't see that right now. I really hope that if they do sign it, that it does benefit Ukraine. I really hope they don't sign it and it becomes a folly thing and it ends up them just flogging lots of minerals to America just to appease them, but America gives nothing in return, like literally nothing in return, because that's how it feels like. It just feels like they're doing it, and in the terms of like hoping that somehow that they will still, that things will be perfect, and it's just I really hope that that's not the case, and that America does come round. But you know, the majority of stories as well is that Trump is a Russian asset. You know, a lot of people tend to believe that as well. There's a lot of credibility information based on what Trump has said, and his actions have been coming across that way as well. So I feel like he's signing it for no reason. You know, it's very concerning indeed. It is very concerning indeed. Moving away from that situation to a very interesting story here from CNN. So Albania has shut down TikTok for a year amid concerns over violence among children. Now, we'll obviously read the specifics of the article in a moment, but you know, obviously TikTok came very close to getting shut down in America. There hasn't. It got shut down for a period. They came back. So, and we know that TikTok has been under scrutiny and under spotlight from other social media companies, but it's not like the reason why it's been facing more scrutiny more than others is because it's been owned by a Chinese state company in terms of America. Now, obviously, here Albania's clearly the Albanian government clearly have seen something here that's regarding that they're concerned about what their youngsters in Albania are seeing on TikTok that has prompted them to do this. It is quite a big step, that's for sure. Now, this article is on Thursday, so it's entirely possible that they may not have shut down TikTok, or they may have reinstated TikTok in doing so. But it just goes to show that, you know, these social media companies, there needs to be more held accountability to them. There needs to be scrutiny on all of them, not just TikTok, but Facebook, Meta, X, Discord, Reddit, all these social medias that have so many followers, that have so many, where discussions are taking place, and that can open up the minds of young children to things. We need to make sure that youngsters are protected as more than ever before, and TikTok is another one that needs to be held accountable. So let's read into it. So the Albanian cabinet decided on Thursday to shut TikTok down for 12 months, blaming the popular video sharing platform for inciting violence and bullying, especially among children. Okay. So the education minister said officials are in contract with TikTok on installing filters like parental controls, age verification, and the inclusion of the Albanian language in the application. Oh. So if they don't have these things, authorities had conducted 1,300 meetings with some 65,000 parents who recommended and were in favour of shutdown or limiting the TikTok platform, the minister had said. Okay. The cabinet initiated the move last year after a teen stabbed another teenager to death in November after a quarrel that started on TikTok. TikTok did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the government's decision. When the Prime Minister said in December that they were aiming at closing the social media platform, TikTok asked for urgent clarity from the Albanian government on the case of the stabbed teenager. On Thursday, Rama said they were in positive dialogue with the company, and that TikTok will visit the country soon to offer a series of measures on increasing the security for children. The company said it had found no evidence that the perpetrator or victim had TikTok accounts, and multiple reports have in fact confirmed the video leading up to this incident were being posted on another platform, not TikTok. Albanian children comprise the largest group of TikTok users in the country, according to researchers. There's been an increasing concern from Albanian parents after reports of children being inspired by content on social media to take knives to school, or cases of bullying promoting these stories as seen on TikTok. Parents consider considering this as a problem, and rightfully so. If they I don't know. I would need to see the content to verify that. Authorities have increased police presence at some schools to set up other measures, including training programs for teachers, students, and parents. The opposition has not agreed with TikTok's closure and has set March the 15th for a protest against the move. It said the ban was an act of intolerance, fear, and terror from free thinking and expression. This is as well. He's trying to suppress free speech of some sorts as well. TikTok, which is operated by Chinese technology firm ByteDance, has faced questions in many countries and was briefly offline in the US recently to comply with a law that required ByteDance to divest the app or be banned in the US. The app suspended its service in the US for less than a day before restoring service following assurances from Trump that he would postpone banning it. Earlier this week, the UK's data protection watchdog said it was investigating how the app uses the personal information of 13 to 17-year-olds to deliver content recommendations to them. The Information Commissioner's Office said they are growing concerned about how social media platforms were using data generated by children online activity to power their recommended algorithms and potential for young people to see inappropriate or harmful content as a result. I don't think outright banning is the solution, but clearly there clearly is concessions and concerns about TikTok, as there are other social medias. But if there aren't filters for age verification and parental controls of some sorts, I can understand why parents would be concerned. Now, they said there that authorities have conducted 1,300 meetings with 65,000 parents. That's a lot. That's a lot of meetings. So I don't know. That does sound a bit sketchy to me. It does sound a little bit sketchy to me that they said they had these many meetings and 65,000 parents there. Now, I would be inclined to agree that parents would probably, because obviously parents don't understand, much older parents probably don't understand. I don't know how much they are into TikTok themselves, but I don't have a problem with limiting the TikTok platform if they do feel it is a threat to their children. But shutting it down completely is not the right solution here. It's not the right solution. Look at it, make general concerns, but yeah, I don't know if there's enough to go along with this. This is a story originated by the Associated Press for reference there as well. But I'm sure I will hear again about TikTok because it's not the first time that TikTok has faced scrutiny and questioning over its reliability. Obviously, as we said, in the US, and like it said in the report, there was obviously the committee report last week with regards to social media companies that happened in the UK, where many of them were facing scrutiny. And TikTok, like many other social media companies, didn't respond very well to the very important questions on that. And there needs to be more scrutiny from governments when it comes to that. There needs to be far more scrutiny on this because social media companies have a lot of power and they have a lot of influence on public domain as a whole. So there needs to be that accountability for sure. I don't agree with shutting down the app completely. I don't agree with that decision from the Albanian government, and I hope they overturn that and instead just try to limit it. But I understand the concerns that people have because it's rightfully that people be concerned about it and the threat that it may have to children. Like they said that they were inspired by their children to carry knives. And now I'm not sure how exactly, but if that is proven to be the case, then obviously I would agree that something needs to be done to address that as soon as possible. Another thing that needs to be dealt with as soon as possible is how we tackle with diseases, guys, because diseases are rising up everywhere. We know that things are really could get way worse before they get better in America when it comes to healthcare there. But over in Africa, time and time again, diseases and plagues reform and reborn or mutate in a way because of a lack of the strong enough healthcare that the likes of healthcare that we have in other parts of the world, like Europe and America, for example. And this one from Africa News, that Ebola cases in Uganda have risen to 14 as a new cluster is emerging. So when we are reducing, for example, foreign aid, so we know that US aid has been reduced by America, and foreign aid in the UK is set to go down. I don't know about other European nations are doing so as well, but when there is less foreign aid, it opens up the possibility for more of these cases to emerge when there's not enough help and not enough resources to help these countries when it comes to this situation. Yes, of course, a lot of money disappears, but it is we need to make sure we try and help as much as possible. Now, Uganda is obviously a country I'm very, very critical of, especially with regards to its LGBTQ plus rights that has been eroding in the country as here. But we're specifically talking about the disease of Ebola and how dangerous that is. And whenever new clusters emerges, it potentially could have significance that could spread from Africa into Europe or America or other parts of the world here. So Uganda's Ebola caseload increased to 14 this week. Africa's top public health agency said on Thursday, with a new cluster emerging from a 4-year-old child who recently died after the infectious disease. So nearly 3 in 5 cases have been confirmed as Ebola, with 2 cited as probability Ebola. Dr. Naski Nangolo of the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention had told reporters. The Africa's CDC reported that there was no direct epidemiological link between the new cluster and another new one, accounting for 9 previous Ebola cases, including the first victim of the outbreak. Okay. Ebola is now spreading in 5 of Uganda's 146 districts, except this includes Kampala, the capital, where the outbreak was declared on January the 30th. 2 Ebola deaths have been confirmed. Local health officials have not been given regular updates on the outbreak, raising concerns about a lack of transparency. At least 3 hospitals in Kampala have handled confirmed or suspected Ebola cases without later informing the public of it. By not telling the public, you are literally allowing it to spread. Dr. Charles Ollo, Director of the Health Service in the Ministry of Health, told the Association Press he believes the situation was under control. Officials were not required to give any updates on any incident, he said. It's under control? Are you sure it's under control? By not telling the public about this? Tracing contract is the key to stemming the spread of Ebola. There is no approved vaccine for the Sudan strain of Ebola that's infecting people in Uganda. Ebola, which is spread by contact with the bodily fluids of an infected person or contaminated material, manifests as a deadly harmonic fever. Symptoms including fever, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle pain, and at times internal and external bleeding. Scientists suspect the first person infected with Ebola in an outbreak acquires the virus through contact with an infected animal or eating its raw meat. Ugandan officials are still investigating the source of the latest outbreak. Excuse me. The first victim was a male nurse who died a day before the outbreak was declared. He had sought treatment at multiple facilities in Kampala, in eastern Uganda, where he was also visiting a traditional healer, trying to diagnose his illness before later dying in Kampala. Ukraine's latest outbreak, discovered in September 2022, killed at least 55 people before it was declared over in January 2023. Dr. Emmanuel Banwe, a hospital director who helped lead efforts to stop that outbreak, described the current one as amphibious, throwing up sporadic cases that requires more serious surveillance to locate and isolate contacts. Ebola in Uganda is the latest trend of outbreaks in viral hemorrhagic fevers in the East African region. Tanzania declared an outbreak in the Ebola-like Marburg disease in January, and in December, Rwanda announced its own outbreak of Marburg was over. Uganda has had multiple Ebola outbreaks, including one in 2000 that killed hundreds. That killed hundreds. The 2014-2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa killed more than 11,000 people. The disease's largest death toll. Ebola was discovered in 1976 in stimulus outbreaks in South Sudan and Congo, where it occurred in a village near the Ebola River, after which the disease is named. When you are not giving the essentials that people need in these countries, in these impoverished countries, when they don't have the basics of healthcare, it allows disease and these diseases to spread and famine to mutate and whatnot. This is something that has been consistently happening. We are consistently putting ourselves, the planet, we are putting ourselves of future pandemics consistently at risk by not addressing these issues, by not addressing and giving people the basic of the needs of healthcare. We can significantly reduce these the possibility of pandemics, of spreads of diseases, not just here but in the rest of the world, if we tackle these core issues, ensuring that people have basic healthcare needs, basic sanity, sanity products like simple hand washing of hands, simple showers, all these kinds of things. You know, some of the basics of things can make the world of difference to people when it comes to stopping these diseases being spread. I know there's some cases where they mutate, where they're airborne and all that kind of stuff, but we can do more. We can do more, and we should be doing more on this as a species, because these things do kill at the end of the day, and we should be doing everything we can to prolong the lives of others. And not enough is being done, again. But because it's Africa, it's not something that's talked enough about. Because how many times do we have to say this, that Africa is a country that people do, it's a continent that people do not pay enough attention to when it comes to these serious issues, unfortunately. So guys, going to take a little break here as we reach the 25-minute mark here on the World's News Round. We've got 3 more stories to cover here. Hope you guys enjoyed this funny video here to kind of just like have a bit of a laugh here. It's actually in English. It's an English funny video rather than a world one, but it's from Foil Arms and Hogs YouTube channel. So do check out their YouTube channel whenever you get the chance to, guys. The title of this video is called "An English Lord on a Game Show." Good Lord, this is going to go well.
Your time starts now. Question 1. What technique employed by 19th century quarries is still utilized to this day?
I should know this. Blast.
Correct. What is the common term for a 40-40 level score in tennis?
What the juice?
Correct. Professional mourners, known as wailers, are paid for doing what at a funeral?
For crying out loud.
Correct. A bonus point if you can tell me why they do it.
For pity's sake.
Correct. Tantric sex allows the practitioners to what?
Come again?
Correct. What is the first present indicative in the conjugation of the verb said?
I say.
Correct. What are the 2 main ingredients of a quiche Lorraine?
Well, you're really throwing ham and eggs at me now.
Correct. Lyme disease is spread by what?
Wait, just a tick.
Correct. Name the first imperial dynasty of China.
Qin.
Correct. The Qin dynasty. What is the process of breaking something into small pieces?
Smashing.
Correct. Can you name the body part General Douglas Haig lost in the Great War?
Righto.
Correct. The right toe. And finally, the hunting of what animal by people on horseback was made illegal in England in 2001?
2001.
I'm going to have to push you for an answer.
The Scots.
No, I'm afraid the answer was fox.
But that's not illegal.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yes, it is. Dreadful stuff altogether. Tally-ho!
There's a bit of an odd one there to throw out, but yeah. Was a very odd, very English, very weird one there, but I hope you got a laugh out of that either way, guys. Guys, just a quick reminder, if you haven't already, please hit that like button. Be greatly appreciated, and share this across social media so others notify this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please consider subscribing. It really does help. And if you want to go one step further and financially support me in the work that I do here, not just here but across other social media platforms, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Being a YouTube member here gets you access to custom emojis, can also get you early access to additional content, as well as access to members community posts there. So do consider joining that. Even though 99p or 1.99 may not seem like a lot of money for once a month, it really does helps to support the work that I do here, and that work that I don't just do that here on YouTube, but I actually do it across other social medias such as Patreon and Rumble, as well as many of the short videos that you guys see is also showcased across Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, among other platforms there. So thank you so much if you do financially support me in the work that I do here, because it really does make a massive difference. Otherwise, you can support me also by buying me a coffee as well. The link for that is in the description, and do feel free to join our Discord community, which is free to join as well. Link for that is down below. So check out all the social medias, and thank you so much for listening. So let's move on, guys. So the next one I've got for you guys is all the way over in Asia from the Associated Press. So South Korea has stopped some military drills after an accidental bombing in a possible setback to US exercise. So these exercises, so obviously for us, we see these exercises as really, really important, strengthening the relationship, of course, between South Korea, Japan, the US, from the potential threats of the likes of China, of North Korea in those areas, and these exercises keeps them up. These drills are considered quite vital in terms of protection, defense for these nations. And South Korea in particular, being on the peninsula with North Korea, these are very, very important to them. However, there are times where sometimes these exercises, while they are important, these military drills, and it's important for them to have them, there are times where it goes too far, and that's exactly how South Korean people, some of the South Korean people feel about these military drills. I would probably say that if you ask the majority of South Koreans, they probably say that they do agree with them, but there are lines, and there are red lines, and they do want to be able to live their lives and not have things and not have them at threat. And unfortunately, this accidental bombing here injured people. Luckily, no lives were lost, but if there were lives lost, obviously it would raise a great deal of questions here. So let's read a little bit more into this story, you guys. So So South Korea suspended the training flights of Air Force aircraft and all live fire drills following its fighter jet's accidental bombing of a civilian area, officials said on Friday, posing a potential setback to its upcoming annual military training with the United States. So on Thursday, 2 South Korean KF-16 fighter jets mistakenly released 4 Mk-82 bombs each on a civilian area in Pocheon, a city near the tense border with North Korea. The bombing, which injured nearly 30 people, two of them seriously, occurred when South Koreans and US forces were engaged in a live fire drill in connection with their broader Freedom Shield command post exercise set to begin on Monday. This year's Freedom Shield exercise and its allies' first major joint training since President Donald Trump's return to the office in January, and comes amid concerns about North Korea's booming military cooperation with Russia. South Korea and the US announced details of the exercise on Thursday, but it was overshadowed by the news of a bombing which drew intense public criticism in South Korea. Both the South Korean and US militaries halted all live fire exercises across South Korea. Military officials said that South Korea's Air Force has also stopped its flights on its entire aircraft except surveillance planes and others needed for emergency situations. Military officials said that Freedom Shield training will proceed as scheduled as they plan to restart live fire and flight training after they find the exact cause of the bombing and formulate preventative steps. But if they fail to resume the pause training by Monday, when they kick off the Freedom Shield exercise for US military, that will hurt the workings of the early part of that exercise, observers say. So as I say, you guys are seeing this on Sunday, so it's literally the very next day. So be interesting to see on Monday how they respond to this. Lee Woo-ho, an expert with the Korean Defense Network in South Korea, said that the suspension of flight training would be particularly cause really a big problem in examining the two countries' operational plans. He said flying warplanes would be essential to determine the actual capabilities discussions and the size of reinforcements of US aircraft from abroad and modifying their allies' operational plans. Initial investigations found the pilot of one of the KF-16s entered wrong coordinates for a bombing site. Officials said the pilots of the two KF-16s had more than 200 to 400 hours of flying time. Lee said they likely piloted KF-16s only by 2 to 3 years. Okay, entering the wrong coordinates is that's a big problem. The South Korean and US militaries have already begun field exercises in connection with the Freedom Shields, and Thursday's live fire drill was one of them. Colonel Ryan Donald, spokesperson for the US military in South Korea, confirmed that American service members were participating in Thursday's live fire training, but no US Air Force aircraft was still involved. We take this incident very seriously. We are coordinating closely with the ROK Ministry of Defense and are committed to a thorough and transparent investigation, Donald said in a statement, using the acronym of South Korea's official name, the Republic of Korea. The incident happened as North Korea was ramping up its very feisty rhetoric against the US and South Korea, as it views those joint drills as invasion rehearsals. North Korea's state news agency warned on Friday that the US and South Korea will have to pay dearly for their stupid and reckless war drills. Trump said he would reach out to North Korea Kim Jong-un again to revive diplomacy, but North Korea haven't responded to his overture. That's probably something to keep an eye on. In South Korea, there were concerns that Trump might scale back US-South Korean military drills because during the first term he complained about the cost of bilateral exercises and once unilaterally announced the cancellation of one drill after his first summit with Kim. But Lee said Trump now knows the importance of South Korea's in America's Indo-Pacific and China policies and won't downsize drills with South Korea. I would not be surprised if he does. This year's field training has been held alongside the Freedom Shield, involves 6 brigade-level field trainings, up from 10 such drills this year, according to South Korea's military. Well, accidents do happen. Let's be clear about that. We know that accidents happen in these things, and luckily nobody lost their lives. But still, the injuries obviously is definitely very bad. Obviously, there have to be, as they said, they're doing an investigation on it. They're saying they're taking the investigation seriously. I still believe these military drills and exercises are important, but I fully understand the anger and frustration for South Koreans, especially when people's lives have been put potentially at risk here because of these mistakes. Though mistakes happen, yes, of course they do, but these need to continue. They need to be ready for anything that North Korea may or may not do. You just cannot trust them across the border. You just cannot trust them across the border. So it's perfectly. I understand why they need to do them, but they've got to pull some. Those who are responsible need to be. I mean, I mean, obviously they do need to face some kind of accountability for it. I don't know if the pilots responsible are going to lose their positions or not. It's not my place to say whether they should or they shouldn't, because as we know that people make mistakes. We humans, we all make mistakes in that, and I'm pretty certain that it was not intentional in any way, shape or form. But these things do happen. It's rare that they happen, but they can happen. And the most important thing is that they learn from it and it does not happen again. That's the main thing, is that they don't. It does not happen again a second time, and I really hope that turns out to be the case, that it does not happen again. The next story I've got for you guys is going back to Africa. A very interesting piece here from Middle Eastern Eye. The headline is Sudan launches its case against the United Arab Emirates at the ICJ over complicity in genocide. So Khartoum has accused the United Arab Emirates of violating the Genocide Convention by enabling the Rapid Support Forces, that's the RSF militia, to commit atrocities against the Maltese group. Now, this is very interesting to say the least. So I want to make this very clear. There have been accusations on both sides when it comes to acts of genocide or acts of violence on both sides of this conflict. So not just the Sudanese armed forces, the SAF, who are supposedly, and I say big quotes, supposedly, the good guys in this war. There ain't really a good guys in this war. I've spoken numerous times about this situation but I'm not sure if the International Criminal Court of Justice can really do much at the moment with what's everything that's happening in this conflict in Africa. It is definitely a very sensitive one, to say the least. I do generally believe, based on the majority of information that I have gathered from what people have been saying, as well as many different sources, there has been acts of genocide that have been committed in Sudan. We covered even a story back on Tuesday on the Snowflake Corner, where there has been report that there have been cases of child rape in Sudan as well. I know that's brutal to mention, but it is important to remind us that these atrocities that are happening in Sudan, and it is right that there needs to be some kind of case and accountability being held. I do believe that the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, are rightly more accused of this. But however, I'm not taking anything away the fact that the SAF, the Sudan government forces, so-called government forces, are not. Their blood is their hands are just as much filled with blood as well for some of their actions and accountability on this as well. But we will have to see how this case goes. Now, as for the United Arab Emirates, they have been accused multiple times and they have consistently and continuously denied that they are enabling the Rapid Support Forces. But many people do believe that is what they are doing. There has also been in the past as well, and I've talked about this as well for reference as well, is that we know that that it is possible that some weapons and arms that Britain is selling to the UAE or other nations that are selling to the UAE are passing them on to Sudan, the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan as well. That is an allegation that it is an allegation because I've only heard it from a few sources. So I want to say, do take that story, what I've just told you, with a pinch of salt. So Sudan has filed an application to open proceedings against the United Arab Emirates before the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, over alleged complicity in acts of genocide against the Maltese community, the court said on Thursday. The application concerns acts adopted, condoned, taken and being taken by the government of the United Arab Emirates in connection with the genocide against the Loyalist groups in the Republic of the Sudan since at least 2023, according to a statement published by the ICJ a day after the case was filed. Khartoum said it had brought proceedings over alleged violations by the UAE in its obligations under the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, also known as the Genocide Convention. It said that the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group aligned militias and had perpetrated genocide, murder, theft, rape and forcible displacement, and was enabling to do so by direct support from the UAE. Sudan contended that the Emirates were complicit in the genocide of the Maltese through its direction and the provision of intense financial, political, and military support for the rebel MSF militia. Last year, an independent inquiry carried out by the Ragal Walberg Centre found that there was clear and convincing evidence that the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary and its allied militias have committed and are committing genocide against the Maltese, a black African group in the country. Westafar State was the site of intense ethnic-based attacks by the RSF and its allied Arab militias against the Maltese in 2023. The Raoul Waldenberg Centre report found that there were reasonable grounds to believe that the RSF and allied militias are responsible for genocide against non-Arab groups and other than the Maltese, including the Fur and Zanghala. It named the UAE, among other countries, as being complicit in the genocide. The Middle East and I has reported on the network supply lines that exist to funnel arms and other goods from the UAE to the RSF via allied groups and governments in Libya, Chad, and the Central African Republic. The UAE denies providing support for the RSF. Both Sudan and the UAE are parties to the Genocide Convention. Khartoum requested that the World Court implement a number of provisional measures, including ordering the UAE to take measures to prevent the killing and causing the serious harm towards the Maltese, deliberately inflicting conditions to bring about the physical destruction of the group, and the imposition of measures that are intended to prevent births within the group. It also called for provisional measures ordering the UAE to ensure that any armed groups supported by it do not directly or publicly incite to commit a genocide. An Emery official told Reuters on Thursday that the UAE would be seeking to immediately dismissal of the case, saying that the allegations lack any legal or factual basis. This is the thing. They need to have, unless it's going to be tough to prove, because they need to prove that the weapons and the arms have actually come from the UAE, that they've actually been supplied from there into Sudan. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that's actually happening, that is actually going straight into there. And being able to prove that is going to be difficult. So they may have some documents. I don't know if they've got documents or photos, but they're going to need some real hard evidence to make this case work. Because without it, it's not going to work. The unnamed official described the application as nothing more than a senile publicity stunt aimed at diverting attention from the established complicity of the Sudanese armed forces in the widespread atrocities that continue to devastate Sudan and its people. The RSF and the Sudan army have been at war since April 2023. The conflict has dispatched more than 10 million people and left over 12 million facing high levels of acute food insecurity. Yeah, this is one of the biggest problems as well, is that being able to get aid into Sudan has been a big problem, and both sides have been problematic, shall we say, when it comes to it. The RSF more than the Sudan army, but even so, the safety of security of aid organisations getting able to go in there to provide the food, medical needs, and basic essentials for Sudanese people has been proven to be extremely difficult for them. We talked about that on numerous occasions of just how bad things really are in Sudan. As for this case, like I said, they need to have hard evidence of it. Now, I think without a shadow of a doubt that the what was the name of the group, the Raoul Walberg Centre, they said they had clear and convincing evidence. Okay, well, they've used that clear and convincing evidence, perhaps maybe, not just documentation, but photographs and maybe video evidence that confirms it as well. Confirms that the UAE are involved in this. I think if they had that, it will definitely be very hard for the UAE to counteract it. That is for sure. But we know there's political reasons behind the UAE also supporting the Rapid Support Forces as well. So it's still going to be tough, because even with clear and convincing evidence, sometimes that they will try to find and dismiss ways of them saying that it was nothing to do with us, yada yada yada, and all that kind of stuff. But cases like this, especially when you bring it to the ICJ, they take time. This is something that's going to take time. It's going to take years and years, especially on something like this. So it is entirely possible that the case may drop in the future, potentially as well. But time and time again, the UAE have been accused of supporting the Rapid Support Forces time and time again. They have consistently denied it, but unless they can prove without a shadow of a doubt, it's they need to prove, the UAE, that they're definitely not involved in it. But I don't trust them, and I don't trust either parties in this, because for me, at the end of the day, I want the fighting to stop. I really want the fighting to stop, because for me, it's about the innocent lives that have been lost. So many lives have been lost. So many people have been displaced. So many have been forced to flee other nations around Sudan. Millions of displacement, more displacement here than in Gaza, than what's happening in the Middle East. It is a disgrace that the world does not do enough yet to deal with the situation, the crisis in Sudan. The final story I've got for you guys here is a piece from the New York Times, and it's been a while since I've covered anything on Syria, because up until this point, really, Syria has, since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, there have been slow signs that seems to be a lot of calm. There's not really been much has been mentioned about Syria. But this story is a reminder that there are still problems, that there are still tensions. Even though we haven't heard a lot, this is something that really could turn into something more vile if not dealt with soon. So the piece from the New York Times that at least 70 people have been killed as Syria's security forces clash with Assad loyalists. So skirmishes along the Mediterranean coast were among the bloodiest since the rebel ousted the dictator Bashar al-Assad and installed a transitional government. So I'm going to read into this more just for people to understand the context of this here. This is the security forces for the Syrian authorities in the city of al-Mashir on Thursday night. They were about to be deployed to reinforce government forces that were clashing with gunmen loyal to Bashar al-Assad. So at least 70 people were killed and dozens wounded in an overnight clashes between the new authorities in Syria and gunmen loyal to the ousted dictator Bashar al-Assad, a war monitor said, in the bloodiest skirmishes since the collapse of the Assad government. The fighting unfolded in Latakia and Taurus province, long-time strongholds for Mr. al-Assad along Syria's Mediterranean coast. And it came hours after the killing of 16 security personnel by Assad loyalists in the Latakia countryside on Thursday afternoon, the deadliest attack on Syria's new security forces. Thousands of protesters flooded streets in the city of Latakia and Taurus to demand that the government forces stand down and withdraw from the countryside. It is the first wide-scale demonstrations against the new authorities since they assumed power in December. So these are people allegedly these people have been loyal to the Assad regime. That is the story here. The government deployed more security forces to the coast late on Thursday night to restore order. On Friday morning, government convoys were patrolling the roads of both cities, and residents were told to stay home as security forces conducted combining operations aimed at rearmament of the Assad regime, according to state media. So thousands had chosen to surrender their weapons and return to their families, while some insisted on fleeing justice and continued to fight. Spokesperson for the Syrian Ministry of Defense, Colonel Assad Abdul-Gandhi, had told the state-run Syrian Arab news agency. The choice is clear: lay down your weapons or face the inevitable fate, he added. The fair intentions have become a critical test for Syria's new leaders, whose rebel coalition toppled the Assad regime and installed an Islamic transitional government that has sought to consolidate control. So far, the transition has been going smoothly up to this point, even though that we expected things to blow up. So, and it has been several months now, several months since this transitional government has come. Coastal province has posed a significant challenge for the Sunni Muslim-led government as it extends its authority. The region is the heartland of Syria's Alawite minority, including the Assad family. Despite making up only 10% of the country's population, the Alawites exert outside influence over the country during the Assad family of more than 50-year rule. The Alawites, who practice an offshoot of Shia Islam, dominated the ruling class and upper ranks of the military under the Assad government. So since seizing power, Syria's new leaders have faced sporadic hit-and-run attacks on their forces and Latakia and Taurus by armed men affiliated with the Assad government. So there have been these, but they've not been reported very much. But the new government has called on all members of Mr. al-Assad's security forces to relinquish their ties to the former government and surrender their weapons and vehicles to the new authorities at the Reconciliation Centre. The authorities have not promised blanket amnesties to those who refuse to do so, and many remnants of the former government have refused to take part in the process. This is the thing. They can't... a part of them wants to, but a part of them needs to... they need to be held to account, because during the time under the Assad regime, a lot of the things they did was very bloody, very dark, very violent. So they can't promise that because of what many of these people have been responsible for. Now, many of them will argue that many soldiers and people who are still loyal to the old Assad regime will argue that they were just following orders, they were doing as they're told. But it's a difficult situation here. The overnight skirmishes come hours after security personnel conducted an operation in Lankinia countryside to arrest an official from the Assad government. According to a government official who'd asked not to be identified because he was not authorized to speak to the news media. As security forces left one village, Ben Angina, a government ambush their convoy, said their village residents and the official, at least 16 security personnel were killed, according to the war monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The Ben Antida ambush sparked additional clashes between government forces and armed Assad loyalists in the rural Lakinia. Artillery and machine gun fire ranged out across the area throughout the afternoon as hundreds of people from Ben Ella and nearby villages fled to the countryside, the resident said. It was not immediately clear whether civilians or Assad loyalists had been killed. As news of the clash spread, a protest erupted in major cities across Syria as some supporting the government, others demanded that its forces stand down on the coast. Well, the government is trying to secure control of the country. So I understand the need to not start an uprising, not to start tensions. The government is this transitional government is trying to bring everyone together of all sides into this transitional government, so that everyone can have a say when it comes to the future. By leaving these kind of forces on the outside, it can only lead to more rebellions and lead to an uprising and even once again another civil war. I mean, it's pretty much that's what it could potentially lead to if it's not dealt with. In Tardos, a port city, protesters chant 111 at Tardos and Jabba, and one referring to the area Jabba where the clashes have unfolded, according to residents. In other parts of the country, including the cities of Homs and Ilabib, thousands of people joined protests to support the government. Some have called for a crackdown on rearmament of the Assad government. The authorities imposed a curfew from 10 p.m. on Thursday to 10 a.m. Friday in major cities, according to Syria's Arab news agency. By Friday morning, few people in Talos and Lakidia seem to be venturing outside their homes as the security convoy patrols the streets. This is something I will need to look into more, that is for sure, guys. But this is a reminder that things are not perfect within Syria. There are still problems that need to be dealt with in the country. And obviously, clashes like these are something that need to be dealt with. Now, I personally want to see this coalition government deal with these Assad loyalties. However, I don't want to say by any means necessary, because I don't want any bloodshed or violence. Because what I just want is the country to have some peace and stability and security. That's what I want them to have. I want the people to have that peace, security, and stability, and they'll be able to have some kind of elections that would electoral system that will benefit them into this, because they need that. They've been under one dictator rule for a long time. A lot of people are just not used to the situation that they are in currently. So that is my hope. But I understand the government needs to deal with this. I really do. I'm generally concerned about why people are still stuck to the Assad loyalty, but there's deeper history here than I can comprehend to understand why people are still loyal to the Assad regime despite everything that is happening. But it is something more that I need to look into more myself. But yeah, things are not perfect and rosy in Syria, as they seem to have been for quite a while, guys. So, guys, we've come to the end of the World's News Round. What did you guys make of some of the stories that we covered here today? Covered quite a few interesting subjects here on World's News Round. Please let me know what you guys thought on all of these down in the comments section below. Just a reminder that if you are a YouTube member, you get access to custom emojis of all these guys behind me here, for all these characters, as well as the orb. I'm sorry that the screen's a little bit blurred, but because the sun is shining right now, it's very hard for you guys to see them, so I do apologize. But you get custom emojis for all of them, and a couple of custom emojis of me, if you can put up with me as well. Yeah, you get them for being a YouTube member. But also, guys, let me know what you guys thought about all the videos and stories that we covered here today on the premiere video of World's Newsround. Hopefully I'll have one again next weekend for you guys. But just before you go, if you haven't already, please hit that like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and find support me in the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. You can even join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.